Once again, welcome everyone. Here's a quick agenda for what to expect today. We'll start off with a really quick overview of the Clean Energy Business Council. I'll introduce our speakers, and then we'll dive right into the presentations that we have prepared for you today. The Clean Energy Business Council is a new program of the Climate Energy Project. The Climate Energy Project is a not-for-profit with expertise in clean energy and policy work. And we've been around for 10 years this year, so really exciting. Clean Energy Business Council is a mutually beneficial network of professionals in the renewable energy and energy efficiency fields, and we work towards practical business solutions. Our members share resources, tools, knowledge to promote clean energy and innovative business practices. We started the council to identify how to make it easier for businesses to access clean energy, renewable energy, energy efficiency in Kansas and the greater Kansas City area, and how to make those resources more available. So we make progress through collaboratively working with diverse stakeholders, whether it's utilities, Kansas Corporation Commission, colleges and universities, or experts in the fields like ACEEE or AEE. We do have a multifaceted approach just because our mission is so audacious that we do try to tackle it through a diversity of ways. From our work at the policy and regulatory level to educating stakeholders about the benefits of renewable energy and energy efficiency and policies that will allow businesses to access renewable energy and energy efficiency easier. We also build and grow relationships through working and networking, recognition of innovative approaches. We have events and like Cocktails for Clean Energy, where it's just simply coming out and just meeting the business leaders out there in the area. By equipping the Clean Energy Business Council members with resources about energy efficiency and renewable energy, we're breaking those informational barriers, for businesses who are seeking the expertise on what the options are out there when it comes to clean energy today. The council provides opportunities for Kansas and the greater Kansas City area businesses to potentially also explore new business partnerships and learn from each other's best practices, and connect the experts in those fields. Our members celebrate, recognize, and empower each other's achievements in clean energy development. So it's a really strong coalition of passionate business leaders. And we will definitely follow up with all of you regarding the opportunities to learn more about the Clean Energy Business Council can benefit your business. So be looking out for an email regarding that. And we're so honored to have Brian and Matt leading this webinar today. Brian Bowen is the Regulatory Affairs Manager at FirstFuel Software. FirstFuel works with more than 30 utilities and C&I energy efficiency and customers engagement programs. Before coming to FirstFuel, Brian worked in the demand response, smart home, and community solar sectors, and Brian lives in Chicago. Matt O'Keefe serves as the Director, Market Development and Regulatory Affairs in Western North America at Oracle Utilities, which is formerly O-Power. Oracle provides best-in-class technology and software solutions to improve reliability, service, and safety for electricity, natural gas, and water utilities worldwide. Prior to joining O-Power, Matt worked on various roles at the intersection of technology, government, economic development, and the environment. So let me go ahead and start our first presentation.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Olga, and thanks, Dorothy, for hosting today's session. I'm Brian Bowen with FirstFuel, and Olga, you're making me think I need to work on my bio. It's a bit of a mouthful to say Regulatory Affairs Manager Midwest at FirstFuel Software. You maybe shorten that somehow. So I'll let the hires up know that. But really excited to talk about really, the key word of the presentation here is opportunity. And I think all of us on the phone know that there's certainly a phenomenal opportunity for energy efficiency, as well as renewables and all sorts of advanced energy in Kansas. And what I'm really going to be focusing on today is how data can play into that discussion. So as Olga mentioned, FirstFuel is a company that really, starts with data as our lifeblood. The name of the company came from the idea that some people call energy efficiency the fifth fuel. We believe it should be the first place that not only utilities, but also their commercial customers start when it comes to fueling their businesses and planning for the future. So my presentation today, like I said, is going to focus on the opportunity that we see in Kansas and around the Midwest for data-driven energy efficiency. So you can move to the next slide, Olga. I wanted to just take a step back and look at energy efficiency as a resource. I know we've got a lot of folks working in the sector on the phone. And this is some data that ACEEE put out in early 2016, just about electricity resources generally in the US. And pretty shocking to now see that energy efficiency contributed 18% overall electricity resources in 2015. So that means that efficiency is now officially bigger than nuclear power in terms of a share of overall resources. The point of the slide here is this is a very real and sizable resource nationwide for utilities, for customers to be taking advantage of. And if you click next, I think there's an animation here for the next bullet, which is that efficiency and renewables together actually are bigger than any other fossil fuel resource. And so it's really this phenomenal opportunity and trend we've seen over the past several years for clean, advanced energy resources to be a bigger and bigger share of the utility industry. So very exciting trends. If you move to the next slide, Olga. The good news also from our friends at the Midwest Energy Efficiency Alliance is that energy efficiency is very cheap in the Midwest generally. So they looked regionally, MIA did a few years ago, at the savings weighted average cost of saved energy, so dollars per kilowatt hour saved. And what they found is that the Midwest is not only the cheapest region of the four that they looked at, but it's really about half of the national average when it comes to the cost of kilowatt hours saved. So not only is efficiency a big and growing resource, it's one that's very inexpensive for utilities, for ratepayers, and for customers themselves to be able to take advantage of a great investment. So next slide. But when you look around at the other resources we were talking about, building new power plants, building transmission distribution infrastructure, even things like energy storage, those can kind of be passive investments when it comes to the customer's role. And efficiency is very, very different. It actually requires customers to act. So if you look at what the Department of Energy recently put out in their quadrennial energy review, which is sort of a holistic view of the energy sector, they really see this transition from customers as just load, demanding energy and really being kind of largely passive consumers because there haven't traditionally been a lot of other options for energy services other than utilities, to now a much more customer-centric, personalized, and active role of the customer in the grid. And for FirstFuel, a company that focuses on commercial customers, small and medium business customers, these are customers that have had a very limited relationship with their utility, a very limited relationship with the grid, and now are increasingly looked to make up, the lion's share of savings for energy efficiency goals that utilities may have, and also, to have a kind of bigger ticket savings and better ROI for their investments in energy efficiency, just as companies. So it's really this big shift in the industry, and we're just a small part of that here at FirstFuel. So next slide. So as the utility industry is becoming more customer-centric, they're also looking to, a few of these companies here on the left-hand side of the slide, the very innovative, customer-focused, customer service-oriented companies that we all know and love, the Netflix, Amazon, Uber, Targets of the world. My wife and I actually just had a baby in December, and there's the famous story about Target being able to tell by your buying habits, when you might be expecting a new baby and send you, coupons, let's say for a brand of diapers. That's sort of the customer experience we've come to expect in the retail sector, certainly online at Amazon, or what's that next video that you might be recommending on Netflix. And Mike Innocenzo here from Pico in Pennsylvania, I thought had a great way of summing it up, where customers are really having these advanced customer service experiences. They can order anything online, have it arrive the next day. They can get called back for a help desk call, or they can text their order or use an app to a restaurant before they even arrive. And the key line is really they're expecting that same level of service from their utility. So the title of the slide here is that customer-centric industries use data. So where's the data coming in to the equation for utilities? And that's the next slide here. If you want to advance, Olga. Great. So I'm borrowing again from one of our partners, the Institute for Electric Innovation, IEI. They do a study of smart metering deployments. And what they see is about 70 million meters have been rolled out nationwide. And as all of us on the phone know, the benefit of a smart meter is that you're not just getting 12 data points a year every time your bill comes out, but usually 15-minute level interval data from each of these meters. And in Kansas, the good news is there's actually already a lot of data out there from smart meters that have been rolled out. So based on the figures I could see from the EIA, there are about 700,000 meters in Kansas, and Kansas is approaching 50% penetration of AMI. And that's really, if you look at the trends from IEI's last report on smart metering deployments, it's really vastly exceeding where I think that group expected Kansas to be. That's really good news for consumers, because now they can finally, utilities can finally leverage that data, and customers themselves, to understand where there are opportunities to save energy, what types of programs meet their needs. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. So, well, first of all, I guess, what do customers expect when they're paying for these meters? So we look around at the studies that are out there, and Accenture's done a lot of great work on this. So, first of all, customers are expecting, when they're having all this extra data generated, that they're going to have personalized advice on ways to reduce their bills. So that could be a new rate design. It could be an efficiency recommendation. The next bullet is they also expect personalized advice on products and services. So again, they want to know, is this HVAC program a good fit for me? If so, who do I contact? How do I do that? Or is it lighting that's going to be a better opportunity for me? So about half of customers want that. And then just a little under half want to be able to get more communications that are targeted to them from the utility. So that's things like high bill alerts, and being able to set a threshold when they think that their bill is higher than they'd like, especially for a small business customer who may not have regular contact with the utility. Being able to have that sort of personalized insight without having to pick up the phone and call someone, it's a big time saver, and it's something that helps them plan and budget accordingly. So the next slide. So where does FirstFuel come in? Well, I'll kind of walk through step by step what we do. And as Olga mentioned at the top, we work with about 30 utilities in the US, Canada, and in Europe. And we start with kind of three inputs. The first is customer data. So that could be things like, is it a pizzeria or is it a laundromat? Obviously, those two businesses are going to have very different types of energy use profiles. We also look at square footage of the facility. We look at any information we can find about its recent renovations that have been done, occupants within a building, if there are multiple facilities within the same building. And then we add to that weather data. So this is very localized information about how that building might perform on the sunniest day in August versus a cold winter's day in January. And then, of course, the meter data is really important here. So we've focused on the commercial sector, where many customers already have hourly interval data. But as those smart meters get rolled out across the country, we're able to pull in 15-minute and sometimes even shorter intervals of data. And when we add these three things together, we put them into a modeling engine that much smarter people than me at FirstFuel have built over several years now. And the great thing is we're able to kind of marry up these three sources of data and create a really great picture of each and every commercial customer for our utility partners. So we get to see, how does a building perform on a holiday when there's no one there, or how does it perform again on a very hot day, very cold day. We're able to look at the scheduling. So if a building we'd expect that, again, that pizza shop to shut down by, say, midnight and reopen for lunch around 10:30 in the morning. Are they shutting down all their lights? Is the AC running overnight? These are things we can see from doing that analysis. And we can also kind of create peer groups, like businesses compared to like businesses. And then finally, maybe the most important part is estimating end uses within the facility. So how much of the customer's energy consumption is related to plug load? How much of it is related to heating and cooling? How much of it is related to lighting, pumps and motors, miscellaneous usage that we can find within the facility? So that's the next step through the modeling engine. And then if you advance, Olga. Then we have a very vast set of energy efficiency recommendations that we've built up over time. We can start making recommendations based on all that information. And we've created some rules that, if we see, again, that the lights aren't shutting down overnight at a customer's location, we can just say to them in a very automated way that we recommend, that you check your scheduling or, check your building automation system. And then finally, that translates into, if you advance one more, it translates into kind of personalized recommendations for each commercial customer, savings they might anticipate from participating in an energy efficiency program, basic costs that are localized to that market, as well as payback calculations so people can really understand at a glance what's the savings and what's the payback for participating in a utility energy efficiency program. So if you go to the next slide, I'll give you a sense of kind of how this looks or how it would play out if you were a commercial customer. And, I'm coming to you from Chicago today. I'm very excited that we're going to be rolling out a lot of these features to my hometown utility, ComEd, just over the course of the next few months. But here are some of the things that you might want to do. So you could alert a customer when we see some of that anomalous usage. So again, it could be a night setback that's not happening, or a custom alert that the threshold that the customer has set. And then we can also, when they click through on that email alert or SMS message, they can quickly and easily find ways to improve their energy consumption and save. If you go to the next slide. We also want to reduce the sort of friction between idea and action when it comes to energy efficiency. So as you can imagine, business owners are focused on, if they're a restaurant owner, they want people to be in the restaurant every day. If it's a corner grocery store, they want to make sure that there's enough foot traffic to generate enough revenue. They're not necessarily thinking about, what energy efficiency programs is my local utility offering. So what we provide is an online platform where when they go on to pay their bill, which every customer has to do, we can calculate for them, here we've got install low energy lighting or repair leaks in a compressed air system. These are customized alerts to the meter data and the weather data that we've been able to analyze for that customer. They can click and add it to a plan, and that will link them up to the right, whether it's a rebate program or incentive program, or even a local contractor who can come out and do the work. So that's sort of reducing that friction from just realizing that there's a savings opportunity to actually making it happen. Next slide. And then this is actually pretty interesting, again, for business customers, they might have a number of different facilities all across the state. So if you think about a Starbucks, it looks like a barista here we've got on this slide. There might be a couple dozen Starbucks across the state of Kansas, and there may be a regional energy manager who's trying to figure out, if I'm to start with a branch, should I go to Lawrence, or should I go to Topeka, or where's the best opportunity to save money? So in the bottom right here, we can actually kind of roll up all of the different Starbucks locations under a single account, help that energy manager compare among them, and send him or her monthly reports for a single building or cross portfolio. So that helps them benchmark internally. But if you look just across the border to Kansas City, Missouri, where there's now a benchmarking ordinance, a building benchmarking ordinance, where large building owners have to report their annual energy consumption data to the city every year. That's also a need that many customers haven't faced before, having to just track their annual energy consumption. And so that's another thing we can do through the platform, make it really easy to go online, download your data for a year, or we have a one-to-one connection to Energy Star Portfolio Manager, which is the EPA's tool that's been adopted in about a dozen different cities as the benchmarking tool of reference. So it's a really easy way to understand how your buildings are performing if you've got a lot of them and you're a multi-site customer. And it also helps you comply with an ordinance like that one in Kansas City, Missouri. So I think that's, I've just got one other thought here, which is that, utilities are really getting interested in these ideas. And I'm sure Matt's going to talk a lot about the residential side. But when we're concerned about business customers, I think the light has really turned on in terms of how these data-driven programs not only drive energy efficiency, but they really drive better customer satisfaction. So the J.D. Power Business Customer Survey comes out every year in January. And John Hazen, who's an analyst there, had this quote in their press release. Just utilities are really beginning to understand the importance of engagement using this data to engage with their customers. And that's reflected in what they saw in the survey, which is much better and increased communication from utilities. And the good news is increasing that engagement with customers and increasing that communication leads to higher satisfaction among business customers. So like I said, we're working with a couple dozen utilities on this today and really see it as a trend for the future, in every region of the country. And if you'd like to learn more about what we're doing at FirstFuel, we've got a white paper that we published last year on what we think the future of business customer engagement and energy efficiency really is. So you can go to that link. It's bit.ly, so bit.ly/FFengage, so FirstFuel Engage, and you can download that paper there, and feel free to contact me with any questions. But thanks again to Olga and Dorothy for getting to talk today. I'm happy to answer any questions, either now or at the end, and looking forward to Matt's presentations. So thanks.
That was great, Brian. Thank you so much. Great job. If it's okay, we'll hold off and do questions in the end to make sure that we have plenty of time for the presentation. And
sounds good. You're a little hard to hear, Olga, just so you know.
Sorry about that. And Matt, let me see if I can just give you control of my screen, if there's a way to do that. There you go. Let me know if you're able to do that. You should be able to just click on the top left corner from the start and advance your own slides. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it. I saw your message earlier. Otherwise, I'm happy to do it for you.
Yeah, I think I've got it.
Fantastic.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. This is Matt O'Keefe, and I think you'll find that Brian and I's presentations pair quite well together. Essentially, Brian spoke quite a bit about the power of data and engagement for engaging business customers, and I'm going to speak from the perspective of the residential customers. This is a fairly small group, so do just kind of raise your hand or go off mute and ask a question in the middle. That will not bother me whatsoever. In fact, there's one of my biggest fears in life is talking and no one responding. So certainly engage if it's helpful during the presentation. So once again, I'm Matt O'Keefe. I have the pleasure of working at Oracle Utilities. Oracle Utilities is a division of broader Oracle, the global software company. And I joined Oracle Utilities via their acquisition of OPower. OPower is a company that many folks are familiar with in the energy efficiency and demand side management space. And I'll spend a couple minutes at the outset of this presentation explaining how OPower is now fitting inside of Oracle Utilities. But I also want to pre-apologize for using the two terms interchangeably throughout the presentation of Oracle and OPower. I'm doing my best to have been trained in the new world of Oracle Utilities, but the truth is we still have the OPower product live and going. So let me give a little bit of background on Oracle Utilities. We're working with 2,600 utility customers around the world throughout the whole technology stack of all of the utilities we work with. OPower, on the other hand, has spent the last 8 years developing a specialization in the demand side management world. The outcomes we're most proud of is working with our utility customers across North America and the world to help them achieve more than 13 terawatt hours of energy savings. 13 terawatt hours of energy savings is equivalent to taking a city the size of San Diego with 1.3 million folks off of the grid for a full year. So we're quite excited about that. I'd also note that OPower has two pretty remarkable stats that we'd like to share as well. One is that over 50% of all US energy data flows through our servers, and we work with those companies to analyze them. And nearly 2/3 of all US smart meter data sits on our servers as well. That said, more than half of our clients are not AMI enabled. So whereas AMI data is incredibly important, and can be improve the service we provide as a technology company. The truth is we are not limited to working with customers who have AMI data. We can provide a lot of insights and tools to folks even without interval data that Brian spoke about earlier. Okay, so what is Oracle Utility Solutions and how did they come about engaging with OPower and ultimately acquiring us? If you look at these 5 columns, let's focus first on the 4 to the left. Excluding the customer experience side. The 4 to the left are at the core of Oracle Utilities practice. They developed this practice over the last several decades, working with the largest utilities in North America and around the world to control and operate and provide analysis throughout the whole stack, from assets, whether it is the people on the ground or the facilities that produce our power, to the network and distribution systems to ensure they are properly managed, to meters and ensuring that the data coming off of your meters is properly stored, managed, and analyzed, as well as the basics of providing accurate billing information to our clients and then for them out to their customers. What Oracle Utilities did not have, though, was a customer-facing solution. And so OPower and OPower Solutions fit fully in this column all the way to the right called the customer experience. So we are leveraging and working with all of this data and information that is collected on the left side of this diagram to provide information to the customers themselves. So whether we are providing web portals where we provide analysis and information about energy consumption to residential and business consumers, or if we're providing demand-side management programs, this is where we take all of the Oracle Utility Solutions and make them customer-friendly. Okay? So, how did we develop our philosophy of customer engagement? So it is very clear that utilities are excellent at their core service, and that is keeping your lights on, providing electricity and gas across their territories to folks in a safe and reliable manner and as cheap a prices as they can. They also have gotten pretty good over the years at the basic transactions, whether it's getting bills out to their customers and collecting those payments or talking with folks on the phone to resolve inquiries and safety concerns. But how do we get our utilities from the left here all the way to the right? And why do we need to do that? Now, let's start with the why. It is very clear that the world is changing around us. I think that Brian covered this very well, and I specifically deleted a couple slides that I was going to include because I knew Brian would cover it. But there is essentially this huge disconnect between the utility sector and the rest of the sectors we interact with on a day-to-day basis from a customer perspective. You know, I live here in Silicon Valley, and if I ever hear the phrase the Uber of this industry or the Uber of that industry again, I don't know what I'll do, but it would be dramatic, I guess. And so I guess the point here being is that every industry is having these massive shifts at once into the way they treat their customers. That model doesn't quite fit that well into the utility space, as we know, although there are plenty of folks talking about grid defection and other ideas. The truth is we're still existing in a rather centralized world of the utility sector. And we recognize that, but we also are working with our clients to ensure that they are not just becoming the default provider of information and advice, but they're becoming the preferred provider of information and advice. So getting them to become that trusted energy partner is valuable for our utilities and also valuable for customers because of the incredibly complicated network of contractors, nonprofits, governments who are involved in everything from energy efficiency to distributed generation. So how do we do that? Well, a variety of technologies and tools that move us from this transactional relationship all the way up to a trusted energy partner. I'm not going to walk through each of them overall, but I will provide a couple highlights as we go through this presentation. Okay, so why is this trusted energy partner portion particularly difficult? Well, it goes back to something that Brian highlighted, but that I want to just double down on, and that is that our utility sector is unfortunately woefully behind. Take a moment to really, let this soak in. The gas and electric utility industry is sitting more than 100 points below not that particularly interesting of industries. Auto insurance, hotels, rental cars, banking. We are woefully behind other legacy, large-scale, not particularly personalized industries. And there's a lot of good reasons for this, but we can no longer just celebrate 5-point incremental changes year over year in improving customer satisfaction. We really got to think about the long-term impacts of this. And what's interesting is so many of the utilities across the country are incredibly thoughtful about benchmarking themselves versus other utilities to ensure that they are, in fact, doing as well as possible. When you have KCP&L comparing themselves to Ameren, or Ameren to ComEd, or ComEd to PG&E, or PG&E to National Grid. This is all really instructive. But the truth is, most of us are sitting in our homes, and we have one option as to who we can be served by utilities for gas and electricity. And we are not comparing our utility to others across the country. We're comparing our utility and its service to other industries. And so leapfrogging a utility in a neighboring state or neighboring jurisdiction in regional rankings is important, but from a customer perspective, not necessarily the way they're thinking. Okay, so we have decided, and we've really refocused much of our business on tackling this disconnect for the utility industry. And we focused on 4 key areas in front of you where we know Oracle Utilities can really help improve the customer engagement and customer satisfaction on a couple of areas. One is driving cost-effective kilowatt-hour savings. Another is increasing engagement online. The third is buttressing engagement and participation in all demand-side management programs. And fourth is direct efforts to actually increase customer satisfaction. I'll focus on a couple of those today, but I want to start first with the energy efficiency part. We didn't realize this, but we were really excited to see a couple years ago that when ACEEE, the most important organization in our industry for researching and providing white papers and information about the efficiency industry, did a full-scale assessment of the 14 top-performing energy efficiency program administrators across the country, that they came to a couple interesting conclusions. They looked at these folks ranging from Arizona Public Service to Energy Trust of Oregon to Fort Collins Utilities, Pacific Gas and Electric, SoCal Edison, Tucson Electric Power, a whole wide range from coast to coast, north to south, Midwest to the Northwest. A lot of different programs. And there's only one thing that all of these programs had in common, and that is that they had all made investments in residential behavioral programs. Now, as a former O-Power employee and current Oracle Utilities employee, I was quite excited about this, but then I wanted to find out why this was the case, and so did the rest of the folks here at O-Power. So let's step back for a second and help you understand what residential behavioral programs mean, because this is at the core of the work that Oracle Utilities and O-Power provided. One prime example are our home energy reports. These home energy reports are unique in many respects, and they're deceptively basic. So what these are reports that are founded in behavioral science and on top of a layer of analytics and user experience testing that has resulted in pretty massive change in the way people interact with their energy. What you'll see here at the core is some solid benchmarking data that can help engage customers. Essentially, it lets you know how you're doing in your 3-bedroom, 1,800 square foot house for your energy consumption versus other 3-bedroom, 1,800 square foot houses in your neighborhood, in your city. And so you can get a better understanding as to how you are doing in your energy consumption. If you find yourself to be an outlier, there could be many reasons why. Maybe there are more folks in your home than there otherwise are in other homes. Maybe you are particularly someone who runs hot or runs cold, but at least this provides the information for you. And after getting you engaged and using the behavioral science of normative messaging, we then are going to provide tips, tricks, and program promotions to help you think about ways you can manage that. This is because we recognize that the more folks understand, the more they will engage. But before they engage, they need to understand. And this back and forth critically underlies all of our communications we develop for our customers. And so These have been incredibly successful. They've been deployed in 37 states, although not yet on the ground in Kansas. We hope to be so soon. Deployed in Missouri, in Arkansas, in Oklahoma, in Iowa, in Colorado, New Mexico, and many other bordering and regional states for you. What we find most exciting about this, though, is the impact. With just providing this information, this has resulted in verified and filed savings of over 13 terawatt hours at commissions in 37 states, resulting in over 1.5 billion in savings. This is just from informing folks. And we know this is not enough, though. So we've done a lot more research to better understand how utilities make decisions and how customers act to deploy a broader suite of products. And so I'm not going to go into each of the details here, but I do want to step back to give a very clear picture of the philosophy we take when we're thinking about engagement. If we can all agree that it makes sense to get folks to participate in more energy efficiency programs, demand-side management programs, DG programs, rates programs, and if we all agree that for the time being, utilities will be at the center of that conversation and likely for a long time coming, we're going to think about how to get folks to act. Well, I think you could talk to any demand-side management provider across the country, and they will tell you it's really hard to knock on a door and say, hi, I'm here from the utility or from a third party, and I'm here to do a whole home energy upgrade of your house. Can I come in? That's a tough conversation. So what we have done is work with our utility partners across the country to provide a foundation. We know that you need to run before you jump. And so if you could see my hands pointing to the screen right now, you'd see the way I am Vanna Whiting the situation. But I guess what I might do is like start here at the bottom and look at the customer engagement curve and think about the way it interacts with behavior. In order to get folks to engage, you have to slowly and incrementally get folks more involved in thinking. We don't wake up every day thinking about energy, and I hope we don't have to be honest. We don't wake up every day worrying about how to pay that energy bill. Most of us don't, and I hope we don't have to. So how do we get folks engaged otherwise? Well, we're gonna move them up this curve, starting with helping them understand their energy use, then getting them to think of who they can go to for more advice on this, then get them to participate in utility programs, accept and sign up for TOU rates, and ultimately install the long-term efficiency measures or the distributed generation we need them to do in order for our utilities and our states to meet the goals they've set forth. Building this foundation is incredibly tough and requires a broad-based effort that is not only around efficiency messaging. So, how do we do this? One way is through increasing digital engagement. I think that, as Brian said earlier, it's really critical to think about meeting customers, whether residential or commercial, where they are. We know that it is true that folks want to be online, receiving emails, web, texts, and have smartphone-ready applications. We also know that when there is more digital engagement, folks are more satisfied with their energy provider, and they're more likely to recommend their energy provider. But most importantly for us and the work we do, they're more likely to participate in an energy management program when they're digitally engaged. So what are some suites what's a suite of tools that folks like OPower put together? Well, it's a whole array of different points of engagement. I'll highlight a couple. One here is NextWeb, an online portal where folks can be directed to learn more information about their energy consumption. Whether it is outbound messages to you via NextWeb and our email platforms to provide advice to you about the energy consumption going on in your home, tailored to certain times of year and the type of home you have, or if it's you going online to do an online audit. We're going to take all the information and inform all of the rest of this engagement here as well. To high bill alerts, where, as Brian mentioned earlier, whether weather changes or if there are changes in your usage, we can alert you before you spend too much money. Just like when you receive that gate notification at the airport that your gate has changed before they announce it on the overhead, or if you're using too much data on your AT&T plan. These have incredibly high results with these engagements. I think one thing I might note is something that seems small but is huge, which is a 10% increase in online audit completions. This is huge for any utility provider. They know that with good points and reward systems. Or 70% increase in click-through rates for emails sent out with useful energy information for our customers. I'm going to move forward looking at the time to talk about how we also promote DSM programs. We have spent millions of dollars as an industry to get folks to participate, and we still have woefully low participation rates overall. Many people have been in meetings in our industry where we stand in a room with our utility clients and people are high-fiving when 1,000 people participated in the program. That is not something to mock or laugh at, but it's just to say we got to set our bar higher. And so how are we going to do that? Well, we got to be honest about the fact that there are some folks that are ready and willing to participate and some that are not. And that those who are ready, that we got to reach them at the right time with the right message. That is tough. We have worked with our clients across the country to ensure that they are utilizing the data that underlies all of our approaches to targeting messages to the right customers. But I got to tell you, we got to start with the walking before we run and then before we jump. So we start with some simple things first. Thinking about and identifying folks with older homes versus newer homes, built to different code, folks who've recently moved versus folks who've been in their home for a long time, renters versus owners, low income versus high income. And once we bucket these categories and these subcategories within those, we can then provide the right message. I live in an apartment. I am not a great candidate for a hot water, a furnace upgrade, but I am a great candidate for a lighting program. OPower, working with PG&E, knows to target me with that right program. I'm also looking for a house. When I move into that house, I will be targeted with messages about new appliances and thinking about purchasing the right dishwasher for reasons besides just the ones associated with vanity and what it looks like, but also its energy efficiency capabilities. And so meeting folks at the right time with the right message is incredibly important. So I'm going to wrap it up here, but I do want to just talk about what this would look like in practice overall. When you think about all these tools together, you got to think about one customer, what their experience would be like. So say that Derek is our guy here and he owns an older home. So we're going to send him an offer for an appliance rebate. But how do we get him to act once he receives that? Well, there are 3 steps. He might have received this rebate from us, but first we're going to make sure he's aware, then that he's properly considering this, and then he actually acts. We didn't make this framework up. Tons of companies across the world certainly use it to better market their product. But we brought it at scale to the efficiency industry. So we're going to make him aware of the offerings first. How do we do this? We're going to put a promotion for him for this appliance rebate program on his electronic and his paper home energy report. Next, we're going to help him consider this offer. This happens over several months. We'll say months 2 through 5, as you see in the example in front of you here. We're going to repeat this message over and over in different forms with different content. We're going to change the language a little bit to keep things interesting, but make sure he keeps seeing the same message and that he doesn't get confused. Because ultimately, you don't wake up every day thinking about these issues that we want you to think about. So once he sees it a few times, it likely clicks through, and maybe he finally gets that electronic HER through his email, and he's going to click through online to go see what that program looks like. Finally, to get him to act on the offer, we got to make sure that we get this to him at the right time after the right bill spike, or when there's a rate change, or when an offer is going to expire. So this is just like when we've been online and we once clicked through to check out clothes on a certain website or a vacation to a certain location. We're going to ensure that we are reinforcing this message over time through various points of contact. I'm going to wrap it up there. But I'm certainly excited to answer any questions you might have or talk more about any other case studies that might be relevant. But thanks again to Olga and to the Clean Energy Business Council for getting us together today. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, great presentation, Matt. Does anyone have questions for Matt or Brian?
I think one question, this is Bill Dorsett. One of the questions I have is this is informational. I wonder if there's any of these home energy or consumption meter programs that actually go back and are interfaced with, say, a set of consumption interlocks so that the customer can actually be changing their behavior based on that moment's energy consumption. I know there's a number. There was one called Energy Century, I think, out of Fort Collins, Colorado, and they have an interlock. And I know that there's a utility in South Dakota that's recommending it to their customers. and it basically keeps the demand charges reduced by actively shutting off water heaters or air conditioners for periods of time while the demands are very high. It would be ideal if this thing could be combined with a monitoring system as well.
Yeah. I'll take that question. This is Matt O'Keefe here. What you just described is really exciting. I am quite excited about those type of systems and technologies coming forward, and I know that I will be on the front lines of that in any home that I'm able to live in, and I look forward to participating in programs like that. But I got to tell you, I'm an early adopter, and I'm a bit of a tech geek, and I also care deeply about these issues, and so
Sure.
I'll be one of the first to sign up. Unfortunately, those programs are not deploying at the levels and size that we need them to. And you're not getting enough folks to raise their hands. For a variety of reasons, folks don't want to give up control, and they are skeptical many times for this. And so although there's some great technology companies out there, and we certainly would love to continue to promote those, we're taking a broader look at this, where it's more about the average everyday consumer and their willingness to actually give up control. I think a great example of this is when you look at direct load control programs and the incredible amount of money, time, and effort spent on these DR programs. And they have been successful, but the overall penetration of DLC programs for demand response, even in the best programs, is below 10% of residential customers. So that's when you're actually paying people to participate in control programs. So that's just to say, overall, I think those technologies are fantastic. We certainly will be happy to promote those with our utility clients. We're just not seeing the adoption levels and the adoption curve moving as quickly as we'd like them to.
Okay. Do you see that changing when we have more utility adoption of time of use and demand pricing?
Gosh, let's definitely keep an eye out for that. But I will say that in the markets where we've seen TOU deployed, we have not seen a necessarily significant uptick there. What I would say is that a lot of the same value can be gained from outbound communications from the utility. So if you set up, alerts from your utility provider, they can let you know when things seem a little bit wary or a little off. Typically what happens in most studies I've seen is that energy efficiency outcomes from in-home technologies are oftentimes front-loaded. You get that great in-home display, and you are glued to that for a couple of weeks, maybe even a couple months. But over time, it just resides in the background, and maybe it's no longer on the counter, and now it's in a cabinet. And folks are not paying attention as much as they might have in the past. And it takes a hobbyist to even care enough to begin with. So I would expect there to be some increases, but again, probably not enough to take care of the problems and to meet the goals we've set for ourselves.
Yeah.
I can speak quickly to the business side of that too, and I think it's a great question. And as a fellow energy geek like Matt, I would probably be the first to sign up for that type of program. I think they're pretty exciting in terms of what could be done with the technology today. Just looking at commercial customers like we do at FirstFuel, obviously demand response in some markets has been very, very successful with commercial customers, and it's great to see utilities also looking to manage demand through their own programs, as well as through the programs that are in open markets like PJM. But when it comes to finding the right participants, I think Matt makes a great point. If you're designing a program, you need to look at what the addressable potential market for that is. I'll give an example of two potential customers who could participate in a demand management program. And even within the same industry, let's look at a laundromat, where people are coming in and doing their clothes with it, and using dryers maybe right around peak times, versus a dry cleaner that maybe is sending all their clothes off site to be taken care of for customers, and then they're basically operating that whirling set of hangers for customers, and that's their main energy consuming device. So obviously, what we would help a utility with when they're designing this type of demand management program is find customers that actually have that potential to manage their demand in a way that won't be disruptive to their customers, rather than sending the same program communications to every single customer. We would really just target those that not only have potential, but also the ability to participate in such a program. And what we find is that tends to get a better response from the customer because they feel like there's been some level of personalization and understanding of their business, and not just a generic message that goes out to every single customer, hoping that, as Matt said, sub 10% of them will actually ever end up participating. So having that level of personalization is really essential, especially as we come into these more innovative program designs. And we really think, regardless of what the program is, you really have to have that.
So I have a question, or maybe a comment. So Kansas is behind the curve, and we don't have those same kinds of utility offerings currently. So what's it going to take, and what can folks on this call do to help us, promote these kinds of programs more broadly? If you want to speak to where you see opportunities in Kansas.
Yeah, and I could take that quickly. And Matt, I'm sure you got some thoughts on this too. But I think when I look at Kansas, and as Matt said, we're also at FirstFuel, we're not yet operating in Kansas. We'd certainly love to. But if we look at neighboring states, if we look at Missouri, where there've really been some very successful programs, and I think actually last year on ACEEE's ranking of the states, Missouri was the most improved state. So if you look at just how that state has come along, even in just the past few years, and really made some big strides in energy efficiency, there's much to be learned from our neighbors. And when it comes to looking at MIA in Missouri, and now what's going on in KIA in Kansas, I think my message to policymakers is let's look at the slate of programs that have been proposed. They have worked in a neighboring state. I think they can certainly work in Kansas. So that gets me excited to know that some of that progress from Missouri is sort of on its way across the border. So that'd be my key message there. And like I said, I think Kansas has a really great leg up over Missouri, and that there's tons of data for us to really engage customers around the programs, in the state of Kansas. So I think those are kind of the two main things that that get me excited about Kansas.
Thanks.
I think another thing to think about here is we have seen as a company some of our largest deployments of these technologies and services in some states that actually don't have particularly robust energy efficiency offerings. And that is because this is just good customer service. And when you think about the demands of customers, this is increasingly what they want. And one thing that we can all do is make it clear that there is real value in the services and technologies and information, not just from an energy efficiency perspective, but from a customer management perspective. And so I think that when you see folks from companies like Brian's and mine walking into utilities and regulators and groups like this, we want to be clear that yes, the kilowatt hour outcomes are fantastic, but there are many utilities going large and investing heavily in projects like this because it's about ensuring that customers are getting an increased level of service that they are otherwise accustomed to in the rest of the institutions they're interacting with.
Yeah, Dorothy, and this is Jamie from Nest. I'll just add one more point, and it's just to back up exactly what Brian and Matt said, and that is exactly the one where Kansas customers are asking for these programs. I mean, you look at what we've done with the thermostat program at KCP&L, where you're getting tweets and Facebook messages and all this social media that not only is proliferating from Missouri customers, but also from Kansas customers asking for it. And, it becomes a much less abstract conversation around, customer management and thinking what we know the customers want when they're outright saying, bring this to Kansas. So I'd absolutely agree with Matt on that point, that getting beyond the kilowatt hour discussion, it's talking about proactive customer engagement that sets the utility up for, that long-term relationship.
And I would just say, I'm guessing most people on this webinar know this, but there is a docket at the Kansas Corporation Commission. The Clean Energy Business Council is supportive of that. Climate and Energy Project is happy to help anyone on the call submit public comments or letters in support of the docket. If you want to see more of this kinds of data-driven opportunities for both residential and business customers, reach out and we can help you put that together. And we'd encourage you to do that within the next couple of weeks because the energy efficiency hearings start on March 22nd. So thank you.
And just to put in a plug for the hard work that Dorothy and Olga do, we are members of the Clean Energy Business Council here at FirstFuel. Very excited to be part of the founding group. And I think it's essential to have experts like Dorothy and Olga looking out for ratepayers' interests and really trying to bring the programs that have been working in other states to Kansas where, Jamie, you said it, customers are asking for them. So really appreciate the work that you guys are doing on behalf of the whole efficiency industry, not just FirstFuel.
You're here. Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Any more questions?
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. I know this is the first webinar, and I really appreciate you guys doing this, both you guys for joining it and giving the presentations, but also you and Olga and Dorothy for bringing this as a webinar. It's more difficult to justify driving to Kansas City and spending a day there when it's and I'm sure it is for you guys from the West Coast and from Chicago. It's much more appealing to come here and visit you guys on a webinar than it is to drive to Kansas City and spend the day. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Well,
yeah.
I think
Matt,
yeah, I think this is a really great example of the level of expertise that's among our founding members, and we'll continue doing webinars, but then also in-person events as well, such as lunch and learns and networking opportunities. That way we can cater to a variety of tastes. Please make sure to follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. Make sure to visit our website. We constantly update and add new events, new webinars, and new networking opportunities. Our contact information is on here. If you have any more questions or anything else that you want to reach out to, any comments. Once again, I really want to thank our wonderful speakers today, Matt and Brian. Great, fantastic job. This was recorded, so once we save it and we'll post it on our website and make sure that everyone else has access to this great information. So thank you all and have a good rest of your day.